Hello, my name is Hee-Jin Kim, and well, thanks you for covering quite a lot of primitive and sexual stuff. I actually deleted quite a lot of them, but anyway, my interest will be a little bit overlapping with this. But okay, before than that, my job is independent curator, and I've been practicing as a curator of contemporary art for 15 years, in and out of Seoul. So my presentation will be really like more on an intuitive level. So I'm not a theorist. I will mostly just run through the artworks so that you can just follow me up and also just feel the whole artworks together. I think that is the basic bottom line of enlivening the 80s, whatever. So, okay, because as far as I understand, well, my job is actually would be something like a case study of 민중미술. Perhaps you noticed the Hanja Chinese character over there, 민중미술, which is a representative sort of art form art of the 80s of South Korea. And then from the introduction of the symposium, I also noticed that our aim is kind of double. One is to get somehow resolve or something like stigma, right? Some standardization or deformation or, I don't know, deformation of an object, whatever, whether be it an era or an art culture, whatever. And then we just want to go beyond it, right? But in between, I rather use very strong word like stigma, but when we apply 민중미술 in this context, to this context, actually the word like stigma would be the proper word. It has been stigmatized. Anyway, how to overcome this stigma and how to imagine the next dimension for future, perhaps, right? That is not an easy process. And then in between, perhaps we implicated too many questions as an easy process. The questions would be like, what is its current condition and why has been it so and why should it be revisited? Those three questions are still just pulling us all to the bottom line, right? So here, the little element called humor is my effort, deliberate effort to go beyond sort of entrapped status of 민중미술 for some sort of trans critique on 민중미술 on a different level of understanding globally together, perhaps. So, humor, as for the word choice, of course, I'm still doubtful, but still you can help me out, whether would be a relevant framework, new framework for revisiting 민중미술. When you hear the word like 민중미술, perhaps you might already have this impression somewhere in your mind. I don't want to actually go into the textbook, history textbook. It's 80s of South Korea was so, vibrant anyway. So 민중미술, which is known as people's art. Well, but still the main image of this first exhibition, which was actually the first premiere of 민중미술 in 1988 in the middle of the hardships in the US in artist space, curated by historical 민중미술 critic and also artist Song Wan-kyung. That image was such a perfect choice because he wanted to celebrate the brave victory of the hardships. I mean, their struggle against, something. So, but which is in a way really, well, how would I say? Still, to me, it is pumping up a beautiful energy, but still, that provide, brought forth a backlash. Huge backlash right after that. So the whole discursive passageway on 민중미술 has been somehow just lingered within this vicious cycle. As you can see, the government focused on the manifestos of each artist, and then there came suppression, and artists and critics altogether defended, and there came the vengeance again. Vengeance, suppression. We call it rat complex, and now we call it like Minjung complex. Once you are there, you are totally entrapped. So at the time of liberal government until 2009, there was two extreme discourses on 민중미술. One was ultimate fetishization of 민중미술 as a historical glory and ultimate, the epic story of democratization. But on the other hand, there was another huge, countercurrent demystifying, the Minjung Misur. Let's focus on the specific details, please. But still, back to back, in the middle, the Minjung Misur was lost. So this whole situation was also promoted partly by the discursive structure, by the critics. So you can see the first approach onto Minjung Misur was totally by ideas. Let's read into the ideological strands. That is good, It's great philosophical book in the line of Marcuse and Adorno, good. But still, that still all goes on to social reformation, monolithic, one intent. And then everything is divided onto really perfect, organized 3 activities like Minjung, Minju, Minjung, right? 민족, 민주, 민중. So anyway, that was for the decade. It was a clear mapping, but still from the 90s, somehow this simplification somehow pushed the Minjung Misur onto the corner of the 80s. So they couldn't answer properly in the 90s questions and 2000 questions, whole questions of late capitalism, neoliberalism, and liberalization all along, just surging to the Minjung Misur artists. So Minjung Misur couldn't answer them all because of its self-confinement in a way, within the beautification of the democratic achievement. And then second idea was, okay, then let's make it into good art. Let's put them all into a good art criticism, right? So they described something like aesthetic Minjung Misur and Minjung Misur as a movement. So their intention was to embrace, of course, 2 kinds of Minjung Misur. But still, this embellishment was inconvenient to me because it was partly untrue. Because artists actually mixed up and co-opted 2 kinds of strategies during the daytime, they work on high, really beautiful, paintings, and overnight they work on this informal ephemera. So in that case, it was partly untrue, but still, this kind of formal aesthetic criticism somehow tend to highlight more the formal practices instead of the informal, ephemeral activities. So it tended to somehow produce the biased notion on the second group as a propaganda art, which is untrue. So I said, okay, then my position would be, I was born, anyway, I don't want to go into that. So anyway, my position is something like historical Minjung Misur. I want to keep it as a historical Minjung Misur group, and I want to go into it and dig into it. I need to know more. Nobody knows that much about Minjung Misur per se in the first place. And second, we need to keep focusing on the continuing efforts of Minjung Misur, because the situation is still the same. As you can see, the far left is the Minjung Misur original historical work in the 1987, and the middle one is 1998, and the last one is 2002. And we are still experiencing the same kind of government control and also violence and militarism, North Korean question, everything is still the same. So in that case, we cannot say like Minjung Misur was terminated and accomplished within the 1 decade. So that is my position. And so here I got this idea of humor as a medium of, transcendence and just going further up as a continuation. Hope you understand what I'm saying. So I looked into the actual historical archive of historical Minjung Misur, and I read really like crazy thousands of materials in my archive because I happen to run a nonprofit art organization. So there I noticed the ultimate original voices from the historical Minjung Misur artists were rather different from our preconception, right? So their idea was all aiming at this kind of fundamental questions. We can say, first, Western bias principles of reasoning. They really problematized the materialism, visual centricism, imbalanced order of word capital, voila. And third was broken human relationship. They really went into that fundamental philosophical level of thinking, not just in the social engagement question. And the fourth was, how can we integrate our own isolated status of mind, body, senses, and utterances, everything, because Korea has been segregated for a long time. I mean, divided state, as a divided state. And then fifth was, of course, the general question by the high-end Korean modern art. They are reproducing illusion theme. Then sixth was the revisit. We needed to. They realized already that we skipped very crucial moment of time for reconstruction of post-colonial aesthetics because of Korean War. Then we skipped it. We need to find the resource materials, and we need to check out the revisit, pre-modern tradition. So those 5 groups, which are totally, oh my God, this doesn't make any sense. Sorry. So all these 5 groups are totally from different kind of lines of thinking, but they are all echoing the same thing. So first, this kind of social humor appeared fluidly, but this was not enough, as I can tell you. Well, this was the direct sort of critique onto the immediate concern, right? Damn North Korea. But second was like patronizing the rural, the social, unprivileged people. And the third, I am proposing the whole quality of humor as not just a funness, but as a kind of lubricant of dissolving dichotomy within the society, and also dissociation of your body. And we need to just go further into an integrated body, and you need to regain the association with your surroundings. Kind of Bruno Latour kind of association, right? And then I will really show you, only please give me 10 more minutes. 2 of the artists passed away, really. So, so this artist actually first he whistleblowed the total emptiness of criticism among the liberals at the time. Hey, you are talking about the rural community, but you don't know anything about the rural community. You are entrenched in capital, pleasure, capitalistic pleasure within the convenient urban life. And so he put together 2 contrasting elements, and what would you say? So that was his first idea. And then second idea by Min Jung-gi, the different artist, he went much further into the ultimate problem of this society. We are speaking about some utopian visions, but still, we are sitting on the contradiction of unnatural division. And whether you try to, as you just try to just go deeper, you find yourself become a dot, totally enclosed amongst yourself, and you are totally separated from the environment. That was the whole question. And then this artist was talking about the whole airy terror looming over our body. So she said, like, don't worry, don't get feared. It's a whole arbitrary system of phobia, and it's very, very empty. So you should find your own way, and just straight go ahead and find your own way. She was the only feminist woman artist at the point. So I will just jump onto this master of wit. He was really sarcastic about this Western knowledge system. As you can see, a lot of parody works. He parodied Marcel Duchamp. He really disliked American Gum. I don't know why, but he also made another parody of Johns, right? Is that the Johns? The Whim to the American Gum and Mondrian. And his whole idea somehow developed onto a next dimension. Oh my God, we need to correlate your body with this whole textual information you read from your books. You read your books and you act in a different way. Then how could you criticize somebody? How could you build up and dream up a different dimension of thinking, right? So this painting is called Let's Dance Tonight. It is a combination of typography plus body, and it says like, let's dance tonight together. And he is actually giving a physical body onto the sound of the laugh. It says like, ha 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 ha. The body is the letters, ha ha ha. This is of course the phonic sound of laugh, but he is giving an actual body onto it with the metaphor of a cell after conception, right? So he is somehow imbuing the whole substance of our gut to the false laughter or simple social humor. He wanted to push it further as a new sort of body of thinking. And this idea who passed away, this artist who passed away, he actually drew hyper-realistic cells and protein and actually linked it all towards some of our origins. He went push the limit to the cosmological, some mythical imagination of some sort of human origin, and he pushes it to the level of constellation and then seven stars, northern seven stars, and then this artist actually beat the ground. I call it like it's called like Pink series, very notorious series. Marxist readers normally call it like the group portrait of social losers because of the economical collapse. Okay, but to me it is a painting of long breath. We've been just subdued for 45 years after the liberation. So finally, we are gaining the balance in our body between the inhaling and exhaling. The reason what I'm saying is because whenever you see this painting, the color is terribly different. Of course, it is not neon sign, it is oil painting, but somehow it is a subjective portrait of some sort of air, and the air is coming out from actually the breath and laugh. And these guys are finally hitting the ground, and they are resuscitating themselves from the bottom of their grief, and they are actually overcoming the grief. And it's another Pink series. It looks like orange, but anyway. And this group is, in today's term, it is called Dural, and it is more like a social arts living cooperative collective, something like that. They actually didn't use any terms like art or artist. They actually went down to the rural community and they actually lived there, and they didn't care about art at all. They really wanted to build a new human relationship. Okay, they said, okay, we need to, instead of Bauhaus, we need to actually establish a new set of society. So they ran huge amount of do-it-yourself workshops, and they employed art as a kind of communal act, communal agent of cooperation, and the medium of imagining the different way of living. So their design was totally aiming at the new form of life, totally away from capitalism, of course, I think. And their works are rarely survived, and it's all free distributed. And most of the works were crafts or usable items, and some of them are used actually in big funeral procession here, or ritual good. And so in signs and banners, you never get that. Only just you can see it through the photo documentation. And one of this idea was also developed by other artists who actually designed the funeral procession. Here, his aim is actually making an interrelationship of human people between, like, in between the part players and also the audience. I mean, it is not just a bunch of people just working together. He really sophisticatedly cross-designed it. He was designing the social interface through the medium of funeral. And then the last artist, this will be the last artist. He is basically talking about the last element of humor, I think, which is the brightest side of humor, which is 신명. 신명, you have that term here also in your culture. 신명 means godly light, something like light. The light, he wanted to actually proceed the element of light, pushing to the whole, holistic integration. This may sound really like weird and surreal, fantastically to you, but he is coming back all the way to the societal integration through the national unification as well. It is weird imagination, but you may see it. Oh Yun, this guy who was also a singer and poet, he drew first this hell painting in the manner of ritualistic Korean nectar painting, which is a traditional Korean nectar ritual painting. So he already sees the whole dimensions of living, like earthly beings and also soul beings and also spiritual. All the three dimensions are all embraced in one canvas. And he is particularly talking about the art scene over there, represented by 4 art critics who are dying to be killed. And the last one is, he is actually agitating. He is dynamizing some motion and some ki from your body, and he is wood cutting, so many dancers put gestures, and he was not interested in the choreography. He was interested in the how to amplify that, echoing onto the societal sort of movement. And then here, finally, the animal is also dancing, and he also got this another agent, which is a musical instrument, and he banged it, and also the sound as a synesthesia, it is just spreads out, and the reaching point is to the first community, and then later on it goes on to the divided landscape, and then it went on to finally the whole landscape, including the moon. Even though it is a simple diagram, I mean, his aim was to anyway to embrace the whole divided condition, disintegrated condition of mind, body, sense, nation, society, and the nature. He wanted to just reach some sort of socio-bio, is that right? Socio-bio, bio-symbolic unison, state of unison, which was really always echoing in his work. And his final work was terminated so abruptly by his early death in 1986, along with another death of Baek Su-nam, who did the surreal, the protein drawings. So by these two artists' sudden death within the decade, our Minjung Miso, this kind of direction, reaching forward, and not just hesitating there as a social humor, but reaching toward more as an ontological and also epistemological sort of dimension of unison, had to be terminated all of a sudden. So if we can just somehow revive this kind of animism or primitive desire here, which a very particular character is that is always related with the communal and also political aspect, but still reaching toward more onto a more like a culture, anthropological, and also eco-political sort of aspect of the thinking. So thank you. And this was the final work by Oh Yoon anyway, the riding over the rainbow in the golden cart. Thank you.